So listen, I know that's an unexpected segue, and speaking of segues, we're going to segue right now, like a crossfader on a mixing desk, to our wonderful closing session for the Sky Stage on day 4 at 4 years from now. This is a wonderful session. It's the perfect end for our Corporate Innovator Summit, and this is about the venture client model and redefining corporate startups, partnerships for innovation. It's really important stuff, and we've got 4 really important people to talk about it right now. So let me tell you who they are, and then we'll give them the loudest round of applause because it's the last session on the Sky Stage for today. So we're delighted to have our wonderful moderator, who is the CEO of 27 Pilots, and that is Gregor Jimmy. And he's going to be joined on the stage by the Startup Engagement Lead at Airbus, Mario Recuerda, by the Head of Innovation and Strategy at C Code, Marc Maslorenz, and by the CTO at GH Cranes, Enyeko Ariz Narabeta. So my dear friends, please join me in welcoming to the stage Enyeko, Marc, Mario, and Gregor. Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a real honor to be, the last panel here this morning. It's actually my 3rd time at 4 years from now talking about the venture client model. Tells you that this is a really visionary and conference that's up to speed with the newest happenings also on the corporate side. So before we jump into the panel, I would like to share with you some basic definitions about the venture client model. First foremost, what's the objective? The venture client model is a corporate venturing model that enables a company to benefit strategically from top startups at scale throughout their entire value chain. That's the objective, and that's how venture clienting was born in BMW 2014, so about 11 years ago. So it's all about how can I transfer startup technology at scale, not 5 per year, but 50 or 100 per year, and the very best startups, and really across the entire value chain, whether it's in logistics, whether it's in R&D, whether it's in any HR, IT, whatever the area, wherever a startup has a better technology, that's where the venture client model provides support. Now, basic definitions. What is a venture client? A venture client is a company that adopts startup products via procurement, a purchase order, or via M&A, right? What is a venture client model? Venture client model is really a practice. It's a set of methodologies, resources, process, decision systems for venture clienting. So to be good at transferring those technologies. So it's really an innovation practice for bringing in startups. And what's a venture client unit? So a venture client unit is a department that specializes on conducting venture clienting activities. It's really part of the model of a company where it says we want to be really strong in venture clienting. Here's where we set up a separate group, department with a dedicated team to conduct venture client activities. Now, I already mentioned the origins, 2014. This was born at BMW. The term was coined back then in 2014. It didn't exist before. There was no Wikipedia page, there was no publication, there was no university class about it. At BMW, the first model was developed, and also the first unit was created in 2015, known today as the BMW Startup Garage, which in a way is the, let's say, pioneer or the example that many companies are following. As of today, we count some around 500 companies worldwide that have implemented the venture client model. right? We have business schools all around the world teaching and researching, everything from IESE here in Barcelona, to INSEAD in Paris, to Waseda in Tokyo. We have Gartner that has recently classified the venture client model as a very important new innovation practice for accessing and transferring startup technologies. And last one, a little bit of self-advertising. There's also a growing number of companies supporting large corporates in setting up venture client units and then running venture client units. And 27 Pilots was the first company to do that. But today, multiple consultancies or professional service providers like Deloitte, PwC, Ernst & Young, and also startups are in that field where they support to establish and also support established venture client units. Okay, so much about the basic definitions. There's also a link up to the right to an article that's not yet finished, so you can find this information there, but the article will be published in a few days, because I think it's important that we all have a common understanding of what venture clienting is and what it is not, because if we don't, then it will really end up being worthless for corporates and also for the startup community. Okay, so my 5 minutes introduction are up, so I'm happy now to join 3 companies that have implemented venture clienting some time ago. So there is first SEAT to my left, implemented venture clienting. It's also being implemented on the group level at Volkswagen. There is Airbus here with Mario. And we also are very happy to have Eneco here, who is from GH Cranes, which is comparatively to Airbus and VW, a small company. It's, I think, around 1,000 employees, right? 100 million revenue. So, and this goes to show that venture clienting also brings the power of startups to smaller companies, which is also something that startups need and want, right? Because many startups actually work and provide solutions for small companies. Right, so let's jump into some questions. All right, so here's my cheat sheet. You call this chuleta in Spain, correct? Chuleta? All right, so my chuleta. Okay, so let's talk about three things. First is always, it's very important for a corporate setting, is always the why question. Why are we doing this? Why are startups relevant, right? If you don't have a clear answer to that, nothing will work. No matter what you do, venture clienting won't work, M&A won't work, nothing will work. You have to have a clear answer. We'll talk about this. So then we talk about the venture client model and some basic understandings, and then main question after that is, how do you establish, how do you get it going, right? Venture clienting sounds easy, but to do it right is complex. Think of it like soccer, right? The rules of soccer are easy, but to play in the Champions League, has some complexities. And if you want to engage with the best startups, you need to be playing in the Champions League. All right, let's start with Airbus. Yeah. Mario, tell us, in regards to why startups, main technology challenges in your company to which startups add value. I mean, you have thousands of engineers, you have thousands of tech suppliers, you are extremely good in technology.
Thousands of everything.
Why the hell do you need startups?
Yeah, so thanks, and hello everyone. So why it's important for us working with the startups, but that's our main challenge in Airbus. Our main challenge are related to our, in terms of technology, to our operational challenge. So we are facing in Airbus since the last few years a huge ramp up in our production flow. So we need to secure that we are able to deliver a lot of aircraft. So just for you to have an idea, maybe the A320 single aisle programs that you maybe know, A320, A321, our production rate will increase from 45 aircraft in 2021 up to 75 in the next years to come. So A350, something similar. So we are not at rate 7, so 7 aircraft per month that we have to deliver, and now we need to increase up to 12. So our main, I would say, technology challenge are related to production rate. Okay. So where I see maybe a big opportunity for a startup is to collaborate with us, and we can collaborate with the startups in trying to secure that we can deliver on time and on quality, and on cost also. So for sure, and we are in the best place, so artificial intelligence, computer vision, machine learning, everything related to automatizations and robotic, that's very key for us. It's where we can find a lot of support from startups.
Yeah. And I would like to emphasize this word he just mentioned, which is very important. We want the support of startups. So it's about you helping the corporate, not the corporate helping you. You know? Obviously, it's a win-win, but ultimately it's, look, we've run out of resources, out of IP, and this is where we need to bring in a startup to fill this gap. Now, Mark from SEAT, so what's the role of startups in addressing this challenge? What does a startup have that SEAT doesn't have?
Whoa. Put it like that, it's a challenging question. I would rephrase it, also get back to the initial question of the why are we using startups. So in the end, SEAT Code is the digital hub of SEAT and Cupra. The local ones might know what SEAT and Cupra is. For those who are not local, we are two car brands which belong to the Volkswagen Group. So it's a huge company there. And at SEAT Code, we provide the digital solutions for them. So we develop actually really powerful technical solutions. But for the startups, we see, well, actually that name, no, the 4 years from now, we get some inspiration because it's said sometimes that looking into what startups are doing today, it's kind of like a telescope into the future. So it's not only this part of inspiration that we get, but the strength of the venture clienting model is kind of like externalizing R&D for the whole SEAT and Cupra. So we see them as a cost-efficient way to leverage everything that startups are doing by piloting.
Sorry, give me one thing that a startup has that you don't have. If your CEO asks you, what does a startup have that you don't have, Mark, in SEAT Code?
Even though we are quite fast, because we are kind of like a separate entity, fully digital, so most of the team members come from startups. Startups do have speed, and they have really the impact on their minds, and they measure everything they do, because otherwise maybe in 1 year they are not there. So they are looking for impact and speed. So that's what we leverage in this venture clienting model.
Thank you. Eneko, where in your company do you plug in startups? In what areas?
Okay, I would say that apparently product development or product innovation would be the most interesting point or area to apply startups. But in our case, operational efficiency is the field where we are in fact applying this. It's not something that we did it intentionally, but it's true that the market of solutions that the startups give us is much wider in this field. No? And that's why we're using their products or their solutions in manufacturing processes, as Mario already said, but also in purchase department, sales department, I don't know, accountancy. It's also true that all of them are related to, or these solutions are related to software solutions, which is in fact easier for startups to build. But in internal operations, almost in every corner of our company.
Okay. So before 27 Pilots, I worked 6 years at BMW and in R&D and innovation strategy. And one of the things that I saw that was not clear in the corporate world, and I see this again and again when I now talk to big corporates, there are two things that startups have that you don't have as a corporate, and that you as a startup should really put on the very front of your page. One, intellectual property, right? You have the patents. If you have the intellectual invention, and you don't give that away, and that's something that the corporate at that point does not have. End of story, right? Now, because you have that IP, and that IP helps you solve a problem fast, it helps you solve a problem fast because that gives you access to venture capital. And the venture capital that you would get as a startup for that singular problem is probably in the neighborhood of X20 to 40 more than a corporate would have. So no matter where you look, if you look at a small technology piece for a sensor or for a, any kind of like relevant technology in R&D, in production, when the startup identifies that this problem has not been solved, they have unique protected IP to solve it. Here's where they get flooded with venture capital, because the venture capital knows that BMW, SEAT, Airbus, nobody can imitate that startup. And that gives the startup a lot of speed, right? Because money at the end is speed, right? Because now you can bring in a lot of people that work very focused on that specific problem. So bear that in mind, startups, IP, money, that's really the competitive edge that differentiates them strongly from the corporate. And that's where the venture client model really helps us, create the synergy. So Mario at Airbus, so in the past, so venture clienting is not the first model you applied, right? In the past, you had something, for example, like BizLab. There's also something called Airbus Ventures. What are the experiences with other models in comparison to the venture client model, and what made you guys decide for venture clienting?
That's a very good question. We started like maybe 10 years ago, 2005. Not officially, but I would say in a harmonized way to collaborate with startups. What you have called, we call the BizLab. It was some kind of, the objective was to establish a systematic way of accelerating and incubating startups in Airbus. So, but it was more focused in early stage startups. So we provide to them like a place to test, to come, because we consider that the technology the startup was managing was attractive for us, and we wanted to develop it together. So at the end, so we welcome the startups. We work together for a period of time, 6 months, something like that, and we provide, apart from the place, some budget to develop together, co-develop together the technology. What we identify at the end, and this was thanks to the COVID phase where we, in Airbus, we had to analyze in detail all our internal processes. Well, probably in all your corporates has been exactly similar. So in that exercise of examining and analyzing the way we were managing our business, we identified that the adoption rate with the startups with that model was not so high. So, and at the end, we need to decide maybe to stop that. And in that, I would say, search of new way of collaborating with the startups is where we found the venture clienting model, which would really exactly fit to our current needs.
Yeah. That's a very, very important metric on the corporate side is really the adoption quota, right? You see a lot of startups, you interact with the startups, but how much of that is now they really end up in the corporate as a technology that you use in the long term? Eneko, what got you guys started? You did something with startups before, right? Also before venture clienting, and then yes. Then some divine thing happened, and you decided to try that out. What happened?
Yes, we started with a classical or traditional venture capital model, but it's true that we are a family-owned company. The ownership was not so comfortable with investing in high-risk, immature startups, companies, and that's why we decided we had to change a little bit the strategy. Then we started launching contests, challenges, so that we could attract startups, but that was not the solution because we are not well enough, we are not, and our sector is not attractive enough for the startups. And that's why we joined a new program from the Basque government, BIND, where once a year we have a pool of startups, we corporates go there, we do the pitching, and in case we are lucky, we collaborate with 1 or 2 startups per year. But that was not a stable collaboration with the startups. It happened only once a year. And that's when we found 27 pilots and this venture-client strategy, where we could implement a process to collaborate in a stable way with the startups, and starting from our problems or challenges to the startup, and not the other way around. That was the point that when we were attending to the bind or to this kind of pitches.
Because one of the obvious objectives of a corporate is you need to bring in the very, very best startups, right? A corporate doesn't make a startup better. It's like, so you got to bring in high quality startup. And with venture capital, the paradox is that the better the startup, the lower the chances that you can actually invest. Even a BMW can only invest in 3 out of 10 startups they would like to invest because they're oversubscribed, right? It's highly competitive to invest in startups. So venture clienting doesn't have that investment part and makes it more effective. And at the end of the day, obviously also, it does move the needle, right? So imagine a car company that says, I have 1% of XYZ startup, Wall Street doesn't care. If you say, I have access to technology that helps me, charge a battery in 2 minutes, this is what would move, the needle up on Wall Street. So ultimately, it's always about becoming a user adopting startup technology, and here's where the venture client model has proven to work pretty well over the last 10 years. But there are also some challenges, right? So maybe Mark from SEA, tell us a little bit about, to the corporate audience here, what are the mistakes? What are the pitfalls that when you start with venture clienting that could end up turning that great tool into a bad tool?
Well, yeah, difficult question also. I think it's not fair, actually. I'm getting all the difficult ones, but I'm going to try. Yeah, if we had to start back again with a venture clienting model and the venture clienting unit, I would suggest people who are thinking about that in the crowd to not be perfect from the very beginning. So on the first pilots, things can happen. Of course, there's the success rate you were mentioning.
Yeah.
In the end, it's not everything finishes successfully, but it's a path through learning, right? So I would start big. Everything depends in the end on the people. So get those people, those early adopters. We call them enthusiasts actually.
Within SEAT, right?
Within SEAT, exactly. That's a good point. So those people who have problems, and whenever they have those problems really well stated, you can help them with that. Then it's the time to kind of like point and shoot. But
Okay.
this time is not kind of like a flamethrower. You just get inspired from places like this, but you directly go with a particular solution, problem, and then you look for a solution. So I would say, first thing, start as many as possible, get those enthusiasts the most engaged, the better, because some of them are gonna, turn down in the process. And then also fix yourselves some timings to, for instance, get the first, let's say, success story, because with the first success story, you get more traction from other departments, and use this FOMO, FOMO thing that, I'm going to be, working with SEAT code because the other department is doing so and they're doing fine. So use that, let's say, people and supporters.
That's, we also like to call this venture clienting works if you have a good problem flow, right? So not deal flow, problem flow. So if you don't have those evangelists, those enthusiasts in the corporate that come to you and start crying because all the pain points they have, and they say, oh, bring me a startup, because if not, I'm losing my job because I can't get my roadmap finished on time. That's what you need to achieve. And if you don't, then venture clienting will not work, right? It's a really problem-driven approach. Eneko, a few words maybe for startups before we go over to you guys and get some questions. What are the few recommendations you would have for the startups in the audience? What do they have to successfully engage with a venture client unit?
First of all, I think startups should be honest. I mean, they should say exactly what they are capable of. Because sometimes happen that when we started working with some with some startups seemed to be a much powerful tool that finally wasn't, and that's not the good point. And the other one tried to show use cases, no? Because we don't have much time. We are looking at many different startups, and we want to see use cases that could be similar to the problems that we have.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Show me the problem. Like, you guys are the ones who invented this technology. You thought a lot about why this is helping your clients, your users. So be proactive here, and that could really help also a corporate to see problems that they may not have seen, but once they hear about it, they're like, oh my God, this could be really cool. So we have about 3 minutes for questions from your side. Are there questions? Yes, there is a question right here on the front to the right, too. Is there a microphone? Thank you. We had organized some microphones. I don't see them. Right there. Okay, now it's coming. In the meanwhile, I'm going to take a picture for my daughter. Second. She's always annoyed when I leave home, so just to show her that I did something useful. Okay, what's your question?
Thank you all for your interventions. It was very interesting to hear you. I would like to ask all of you if you could please share one success story of venture clienting, just one story that would you like to share?
Well, one quick is we've implemented at this point venture client model in about 30 corporations worldwide, and none of them has closed so far. So that's one success story, but I'm thinking you're referring to a specific project with a startup, so
exactly.
What can you, an example to visualize?
Well, there's two tipping points in the process. The first one is when the pilot finishes, and then you decide whether you adopt the solution or not. We at SEATcode never adopted a solution yet. We are still ongoing with several pilots. The most important one is we included a service in the My Cupra app, which was not even thought about in the past. It was not in the roadmap, but thanks to analyzing the particular need the business had, we scouted for solutions that could be plug and play in My Cupra app. I cannot say yet the startup because the pilot is actually finishing, so we are going to measure those success metrics we set on the beginning and then decide if it's a go or no go. So I'm sorry, but I cannot disclose it.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of secretiveness around it because you don't want to publish your problems, right? And when you solve the problem, then you will wait some time. But you can write me an email. I can point you to some also examples that have been, written about, and also some videos on YouTube out there around some success stories. There's time for another question.
We have two, sorry, because they had one and I also had one.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, my question was about when you talk about startups, and this might be just me, but I feel like in general, like in society, we think about startups more as in digital startups, like here in Spain, like Glovo, like apps, platforms, things like that. And listening to you guys, and obviously you all work in more like physical, like material, I don't know how to say this, and obviously like automotive and stuff. Do you guys differentiate solutions or problems that are more like digital and involve more like the thinking or the process versus the mechanical, or like you were saying, like can we save gas or oil or whatever, doing this other more technical thing? How do you approach, or do you put them all in the same batch?
If I may, in our case, we don't make a differentiation. So we as a venture client unit, we just listen to every business unit that has a problem. but we help them to assess their problem. So and depending on the case, we can check what is the business impact of that problem if we solve it. And it's there where we, I would say, we select depending on, because of course we prioritize those that has a direct and a fast, high impact in the company. But we don't make a differentiation. We can have business unit coming from manufacturing engineering, or even from the artificial intelligence catalyst department, or procurement, whoever. What we will look at is we look for I would say, big business impact. That's our selection criteria.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it needs to be a startup. So there are some, it's not about the innovative subsidiary of a big corporate that calls itself startup. No, it's always about startups. And there are some basic quality criteria around the startup, correct? Does it have venture funding? Who's the VC? What is the team? What's the technology maturity? And then it's really responding, whether it's a materials department at a cement company, or whether it's a sensor for an aircraft engine, or whether it's a logistics issue within the warehouse. As long as there's a startup that has a unique solution, that's where venture clienting can work. One more question. We are 2 minutes over, so we are the last panel, so we can stay here all afternoon.
No, okay, so one last question. And maybe a bit of a basic question, because I'm not so familiar with the venture client model. Are these departments within your companies really open to getting external support and really, telling basically that they are not capable of solving any issues? You think they really request, in most of the cases, external expertise to get the jobs done?
No. Well, not the word any was the wrong what I would criticize.
No,
definitely
okay.
BMW and
some
and all
cases, let's say.
There are thousands and thousands of problems that the corporate would solve significantly better than any startup.
But I think it depends on the persons. It's not a department. It's the leader of each group, the one that is more open or not. There are some profiles that will never collaborate with a startup. There are other profiles that are willing to collaborate with the startups. So that's not something, I think. Of course, there are some topics that are easier to be solved with the startups software in our case. No? Hardware is it's a more complicated thing, but depends more on the persons.
And if I may add something, apart from what Eneko has said, so there is also the nature of the company or the corporate that is implementing venture clienting. In our case, coming from the aeronautical field, we have sometimes suffering the non-invented here syndrome, where it's many times stopping, I would say, bringing technology from outside. So how can you dare, a small company, come here and propose that you can solve a problem that a big corporate like us, Airbus, we cannot solve. We need to break those, and we are on that. Those, I would say, barriers. So.
And there's maybe there is a venture client unit called Open Bosch from the Bosch group. Openbosch.com, you can check it out. And the name already conveys that Bosch said, we cannot solve everything by ourselves. There are startups out there that have the IP and the money we don't have, and we need to find those gaps and bring those and the best ones in fast. And that's why we call ourselves Open Bosch, because we open ourselves up to embracing this external technology only if it's unique and better than what we can, and that's obviously a task of the venture client unit. And with that, I would like to close. We are still here in the afternoon, so happy to take more questions or contact us. We're LinkedIn, so thanks a lot, Mark from SEAT, Mario from Airbus, Eneko from GH to take the time and be here and share a little tiny bit about the venture client model. Those guys are the pioneers, and a big round of applause to them, and reach out to them. Thank you very much.